Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Wow, a little slow on this today. So everybody, welcome back. We're here for episode 5 of Divergent Discussions here with Mary Knight, and we're going to finish continuing the ethical non-monogamy section, and then we're going to start talking about monogamy. We talk about one side, now we'll talk about the next. So I mean, you want to kind of give us a little bit more on your experiences on that non-monogamy side of things before we start getting into some other things?
Yeah. What I have found from my own personal experiences and then the experiences of others, as well as when I was working as an escort and a madam, so I have a rich history of this. It doesn't work for most people. It doesn't work, and I'll say I qualified it with by saying most people, because I don't. But because I read and hear about people who say, "Oh, this worked great for us, and it feels so good, and we're so free, and our relationship is stronger now than ever." But I personally have never met a couple where this worked out the way that they thought it would, or the way that they said it would. It always ends up in divorce, and sometimes I had a couple. I haven't talked about this yet, but ended in serious drug addiction just because she was trying to go along with the situation that and she didn't want to, and so her way of coping was using drugs.
Well, what
This is
I
a married couple, not just some couple of randos, like people who were in a committed relationship.
yes, I noticed that usually one person ends up getting the shorter end of the stick than the other. It's never an equal sort of thing. And these are things that people need to consider when they're making choices, because when you start thinking about things just about what's in the moment and sacrifice the long-term effects, it generally creates problems. And so, yeah, let's pull up a clip. There was a girl that I saw on TikTok that was talking about why she believed that she wasn't suited for monogamy. Just want to get some thoughts on this.
I don't believe that I am built to be monogamous. I know that I can for a period of time, but I also have the belief that similar to food, I don't want to eat the same kind of food every day for the rest of my life. There are so many people and there are so many different kinds of connections that you can have with someone. And for me, that's not just sexual, that's emotionally as well, right? There's always this huge debate around emotional cheating in monogamous relationships, right? Relationships can look so many different kinds of ways. Yes, you can be swingers. Yes, you can have don't ask, don't tell policy. Yes, you can be a triad, right? And have a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever within your relationship. You can be two couples that are partnered together. There's so many different ways that non-monogamy can look. It just depends on what you and your partner agree to.
I mean,
Fair enough.
uh, when I listen to people say those things, the thought that comes through my mind is, how does that look like practically? How is that going to
Mhm.
work out in practice? Because an idea might feel good or sound good in your mind until you actually think about what is being done. How is this going to impact people? Because that's bringing a lot of assumptions that people are thinking the same way and they don't, and everything else like that, and all the different factors that come into that. And I just want to hear your thoughts, because I mean, you're a
I
woman.
know. I was thinking too, what if somebody gets pregnant?
Mm.
That's one too. It's like what's the plan there? Um, Also, I'm looking at her wondering, how old is she? How much life experience does she really have? And the other part, and that, some people at a young age have a lot of life experience. Okay. And I'm not, just trying to discount her just based on that. But it's also the thing she said about emotional affair. The reason that emotional affairs happen is because of a breakdown in the marriage or in the committed relationship. That's why somebody else is going outside to have those needs met. It's not husband or wife isn't capable of meeting those needs in most cases. It's not that. It's that something happened There's some built-in shame, disappointment, something going on that instead of bringing it to their partner, their husband, their wife, they are trying to skirt around the issue, not really deal with it, and so they go to somebody else. That's all that is, and it's I that is the way that's the fastest way to break down a marriage, is to
Yeah,
not talk to your husband or wife. you know, and sexual problems are a symptom of things like that. That's a low sex, no sex marriage. There's a communication breakdown. There's a connection breakdown. There's usually, and I'm going to put this on you guys, it's a breakdown in masculine leadership.
yes,
That's
and
usually where it starts.
there's also that thing called commitment, right? The bad C
That little
word,
thing.
right? So that
Yeah.
if you're making a commitment to someone, that means that if things start to go a little sideways, you have to be mentally prepared to go and figure things out. It's not going to feel good all of the time. Anybody who has an expectation that it's going to be all peaches and roses and all of the nice things, they're deceiving themselves, right? It's going to be up and down.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Well, because love is a feeling, and you're not going to be in love with someone all day, every day. They're going to do things you wish they hadn't, all on the scale from feeling betrayed to being mildly annoyed. And what keeps you together, as you said, Dale, is the commitment. That's the difference. Is That's why commitment is so amazing, because you can relax into that. It's the structure. It's the, yeah, I can be as mad as you as I want, but I know at the end of the day, you're mine. We're together. We've got each other.
What It's interesting you said that love is a feeling, and I mean, for me, it feelings are associated with it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a
Mhm.
principle. Like you have that commitment is part of love. Like it's something that you choose because you know that sometimes the feelings may come and go, and your feelings may change in the moment because they pissed you off or you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but you still make that choice because you know that this person is worth staying with and that you'll work through it because this is why you decided to commit to that person, right? Because it especially on the man side, love makes men do things that don't feel good. They will go through men just don't care about feeling good in their relationship. They want to secure the safety of their loved ones because they love them, right? I'm not.
Mhm. Sure, and part of that is because y'all have a sense of duty. There is a sense of duty that you have that, I'm not saying that feminine energy is feminine women aren't loyal, because they certainly are, but y'all will stick out and stick with things out of a sense of duty in a way that I haven't found that women have. We have other things that motivate us.
Yes, and this is where to understand the differences between the two. So when somebody comes in, say it doesn't matter whether it's the woman or a man that comes in and starts to talk about the non-monogamy, it's motivated from different reasons on how they go about things because of we have sort of complementary um, types of personalities, or I mean attributes is probably a better word, that we bring to the table. And so how we view the world are based on we have a higher amount of masculine attributes in men and a higher amount of feminine attributes in women. So it shapes the way we view things. And so we can't expect that the other person is going to see the same exactly like us. That'll lead you to disaster very quickly.
Well, yeah, and cause all kinds of breakdowns too. Personality breakdowns, also breakdown of the marriage, breakdown of the family, and as we're seeing in many cases, and in very serious ways, a breakdown of our society also. Because what if we don't have family, and we're not encouraged to create families? then what do we have? Where do we go? And it's really amazing how I I I know that woman that was talking, has she ever had a real committed relationship before? Has she ever been able to experience that beautiful masculine leadership where she truly surrendered? Like where someone really, excuse me, gave her that container where she could really flourish? And my guess is no, because once you experience that, nothing less will do. It
It-
just won't.
yes. Yes. You'll be like, wait, I haven't seen this before. And you're going to be you're arrested. Your attention is arrested. I'm going to bring up one more clip for the ethical non-monogamy before we move on, because I looked at this and I didn't understand. Like, I mean, I'm listening to the words, but I don't understand the rationale behind this. And so I was just like, if it,
Oh my
I just,
gosh, I'm
I'm just gonna bring
I'm
it up. I'm
scared.
just gonna bring it up. They're just sitting around talking about um monogamy, ethical non-monogamy in a hierarchical sense. But then the conversation, I'm not tracking with it. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So I'll bring it up.
Kind of wanted to
Okay, oh
chat a
gosh.
bit about hierarchical polyamory. Is it really bad? I'm not saying that it can never be ethical. I'm saying that it can be unethical in the same way that any other relationship structure can be. We've been raised in a hierarchical society, right? From when we were very, very young. So it totally makes sense that a lot of us feel most comfortable with this structure because we just have the most practice with it. My issue is not with the hierarchy in and of itself, but the absence of unpacking, asking yourself, am I doing this because I want it, or am I just doing it because I want to protect myself from getting hurt? An element that can sometimes exist within hierarchical structures is a concept called veto power, which essentially gives one partner the ability to affect the relationship that they are not in. I don't know if there is an ethical way to engage with that practice. I think that is inherently a problem. In relationship anarchy, you're being asked to look at how to make your relationships equitable as opposed to equal. And two tools that I want to mention, if there are folks out there who are interested in learning more about this, is the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, which is essentially a
What?
That's what I said. That
Okay, that I want to look that anarchy. I want to look that up. I want to know out of morbid curiosity what that. Okay, I didn't. You know what? I didn't hear the word patriarchy mentioned once.
no, they said hierarchy, which is just
I
another
know.
way to describe it, right? But
Yeah.
the one thing that I did gather is that they talked about the veto power, about not wanting to get hurt, and usually that is something that is ascribed to men leading in families, that sometimes they have that say to override in certain situations. And that's generally in high strain situations because men generally function better. It's not that you just come in and tell your wife, well, this is it, and too bad you're going to take it and like it. But it's like, if things are going very sideways and there's a lot of chaos, generally the man is the calmer one, or you would hope he would want to. A woman shouldn't be following a man that isn't calmer than she is under pressure. It's never going to work that way. And so that you'll defer to him because he's got it together in that high pressure situation, right?
Is
That's
that what she's saying? You think that's what
oh yes, because
that was about? I was very. I'll be honest. I kept trying to pick up on something familiar, and I couldn't.
that
There was
was
nothing there for me to grab onto.
that was the only thing. The rest of it, I was like, it was changing as she was saying it, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. So
Okay.
so it so I mean, if somebody is going to base something like this, how can you structure something on something that you can't make sense of? Like,
You're not supposed to structure it, is what she's saying. It's almost as if it goes against human nature and that all structures are contrived and not because that's the way that the mind works though. Mind I know for me, back when I was working in office, one of the things that I was really prized for was I could just look at something and go, "Oh, this is." I could create structure out of chaos. Was very good at that because that's just what our brains do. Is they look for order and function and structure. So, how difficult would it be to pretend that we're not human with don't have a human brain? Is that I think I can't, I'm not even making sense
But I
because
mean,
this is
like,
so crazy.
but just when I saw that, that's why I just brought because I was like, you're obviously sitting down and saying that you don't have a problem with these types of relationships, but then you're trying to articulate it, and it's not making sense. And I'm like, so if you can't reasonably like articulate something to someone in a manner that people that are not, I mean, obviously, clearly the girls that she's sitting with somehow seem to agree, or they're not saying, I don't see looks.
Pretending to.
Yes, but I mean, if you can't bring it across to someone else, how can you justify doing it? Right? Like, this is what I'm just trying to say.
That's so weird. That's so weird. Yeah, it kind of it's one of those things, yeah, where it's almost like if you don't get it, you are unenlightened. It's designed to keep us on our heels, kind of like the pronoun thing.
Y-
Like it's
y-
designed to always keep you where you're like, oh, I don't want to make a mistake, and I have to go against everything that makes sense from the beginning of time, just so that I can placate this group, and that smacks of that to me. And I'm not saying that based on the way they looked. I'm just saying it based on the way
what they were
the
presenting.
the words that were used. Yes, what they
Yes.
were presenting.
Because I don't, it doesn't matter what somebody looks like. I don't care. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously within reason, if you're like, if you need help physically, then I'd probably direct you to a hospital. But I mean, how somebody styles their hair or whatever, who cares? It's
Mhm.
like, what did they say? But if I can't make sense of what you say, then how can I can't reasonably assess it. Like, I just can't take it seriously either.
So when you were searching the internet, just looking for things that you found interesting, what kind of search did that come up under?
Oh,
Excuse me.
I just typed in ethically non-monogamous on TikTok,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and there was a bunch of stuff, and so I just randomly looked at it, and I was like, "Well, okay, I don't understand that, so I'll just bring that in because if you can't just like, I mean, if you can't explain what you're doing, then you have to question why you're doing it." And so we'll shift gears because I mean that was a good place to end off on that one, but
Woo.
we're gonna now start talking about monogamy.
Okay.
So I mean, because a lot of people don't have a good understanding of how to lay down monogamy. Society doesn't tell you. And this is what I see a lot. And they just tell you that this is the ideal. This is, check these tick boxes and you'll be fine. But they don't actually tell you anything other than that. And then you find a lot of dissatisfaction, right? And then you get to you have the feminism on one side, you have the red pill on the other side, and then you have them going back and forth, and then people start getting harmed by some of the things that they're doing because if you take from someone else to give to someone else, that's not right because somebody's going to get pissed off, right? The kind of idea is that everybody have their areas where they can do things, but stealing from one to the give to the next is always going to cause problems.
Yeah, and I think also, again, when we're talking about the red pill community or red pill guys, whatever they are, whatever they call themselves, and then we're talking about um, feminism. I think more so with the red pill because I know a little bit more about that because that affects my YouTube channel, the people that I coach, like I'm very in contact with that every day, not because I want to be, but because people keep bringing it to my attention. And what I have found is that it's based on wounding. Again, I feel like I say that every time we talk about this because people who feel whole and complete and confident and grounded and grown up, an adult, don't blame other people for their problems. And that's what I see so much of the red pill is that's what's happening. Is they're blaming women for all of their problems. And a lot of these men, they've had, they're in their 40s, maybe their 50s. They've gone through one divorce. They were married to the same woman for 20, 25 years. So they have this one divorce that by all accounts was horrific. And I'm not saying that they haven't had really terrible experiences and how they haven't gotten screwed over in family court. There's all of that. But they take that one experience they have and then they superimpose that on all women. And they act like they know it all because they had this experience with one woman. It's like, come on. That doesn't even make sense. But that's what's going on. And it always comes back to me, it's like a lack of experience and a lack of willingness to grow.
Yes, and I think a lot of it's how they begin to engage relationships in the beginning as to how these problems come in. Because if men were taught to do things and men were taught like self-control and other things, they would make better choices when it comes down to relationship. Because a woman is going to be the biggest investment you'll ever make in your entire life, and it can also be the most disastrous investment that you make in your entire life. And so a man should then begin to start thinking more critically when he is going to go and assess a person that he wants to spend his life with, right? And see whether or not they're actually compatible and making better choices, but they don't teach that, right? Our society's like how
And
from
it's the
it.
same with women. The same with women too. Women make a terrible decision and then they've had children with somebody who brings nothing but destruction on the whole family structure. So it's the same thing. We're taught to seek pleasure, quick fixes. That's what we're always looking for. And so many, gosh, I wonder what the percentages of marriages that are based on sexual attraction.
Yeah,
They're based on sexual attraction and then they end up being these sexless marriages. So something is missing. Yeah, and it's like you're saying, it's like lack of patience and not being taught and then trying to blame other people and not being willing to work at something because
yeah,
things take time. It takes time to get to know somebody. We're in all fire hurry to get into bed instead
yes,
of waiting to get to know somebody and see if their values align, before jumping into bed. All these things that are going on that, thwart our brains because once you start having sex with somebody, like for women, we get bonded to those men. Once men start having sex with somebody, it's like, ooh, okay, she let me touch her and have sex. Ooh, okay. What does she want? What does she need? Because I'm here for it. Whatever it is. It's like that's the way it was designed to make us bond like that.
yes. We're going to talk a little bit more on that because I want to talk about the foundation and how where we're kind of going off track
Mhm.
after we hear from the Pillow Man.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
So if you need any of MyPillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis. Get the energy drinks or pillows, kitchen stuff, beds, all that good stuff. Support a good cause if you need it, or there's other stuff in the ticker that you can see. If you're watching on Facebook, Rumble, or BitChute, you will see other links in the description as well. So let's kind of circle back now onto that, the relationship. Yes, sex is it's a bonding agent to help bond the men and the women. They do it all being in a different way, but it brings them closest together. But it cannot take the place of the foundation. It's only going to bond the stronger the foundation that it's built on, the greater the bond that will happen. And so when you just go in and just sleep with someone, you'll get a bond. It'll be a weak one. But if you take the time and you lay the foundation, you're going to have a stronger bond. This is really the key between why people should wait to have sex and the virginity. It's not the act of sex alone. It is building that foundation that will culminate into that. And as you develop and grow and basically teach yourself to grow that relationship and that intimacy beforehand, by the time you get to the sex, you've already built yourself of being able to build the non-sexual intimacy that's needed that will accentuate the sexual intimacy that you have.
Well, yeah, but also, as a woman, somebody could come over to my house and they could leave whatever. They could leave crap all over the house, clothes, shoes, whatever, a house guest. They could come over. They could do my friends, say my girlfriends came over. That's a good example. They could make a mess in the kitchen. They could leave crap everywhere. And I would just think, oh, okay, and wouldn't care. But if my husband did that, I would feel differently about it. I would tie in some stories to it, like, oh, he doesn't care about how hard I work to keep this kitchen clean and how beautiful it is. And then he just comes in and does whatever he wants and makes a giant mess, I make up all this story. Oh, it's because he doesn't love me. He doesn't care about me. If he did, he would pay more attention. He doesn't listen to me, and when we have sex with somebody, when we have that romantic bond, we put a lot more weight on all the things that they do because it becomes very personal and very personalized. And then all of a sudden, everything they do is all about us. Where again, our friends could do the same thing, and we wouldn't think that it meant anything about our friendship. Right? We would just think, okay, they're kind of a slob. We wouldn't be out for blood. But I think that that's like the biggest part is that we put so many expectations on this person, especially in like the modern day monogamy, because we're thinking, well, I gave up sleeping with all these other people so that I could be with you. So you better be perfect. You better meet all my needs, all my expectations.
But that's a wrong mindset to come in, right? Like they're like, oh, well, I gave up all of this stuff just to come in and be. That's superficial stuff.
Mhm.
Well, you can go ahead. Somebody can go ahead and sleep with people all they want and do what they want. But what happens is you get older in life and you're becoming more and more unfulfilled and realizing that, well, this isn't all that it's cracked up to be, right? And so forth. And that's really it. So people can do what they want. It's like, but if you want to get something, how do you get the most out of it? Right? Because if you're going to do something, you might as well do it all the way. So if you're going to go the route of monogamy, then you should dive in head first and do what you can to build the best of what you have. Right.
I think the key is what you mentioned at the very beginning is that how do you choose somebody? How do you choose the right person? And what are your criteria? What are your values? Because so many people don't know what their values are. So many adult people, they just don't know. And we have so many things thrown at us all the time coming from all these different directions. And if you're not learning that at home, or it was kind of murky at home, well, regardless of why, you don't know what your values are, so many people, they just don't. And they don't have good standards for themselves and the way they live their lives. And they tolerate a lot of nonsense, because otherwise we're being intolerant. I certainly can't have that, so and it's, getting away from, so again, we're talking about church, family, those are the things that give us our values. And then as we grow older, we can decide whether or not we can examine those values and decide whether or not we think those are right for us, or feel the best to us, or the most true. Sometimes people need to do that. Sometimes people don't. And sometimes people are just like, yes, I know in my heart this is the way to live and this is right and true. And then, but again, some people aren't that way and they need to go out in the world. And like, we both talked about, we've made a lot of terrible mistakes, um, being, challenging everything, but I didn't grow up in a household where there was a Christian household. I mean, I guess my parents called themselves Christians. We never went to church. We never did anything like that. I would do some stuff like that on my own. But anyhow, that's where a lot of people get their values, is from church. And in some recent surveys, it used to be like, what was it like back in the 1960s, when you would ask men if they had a religious affiliation, it was something like 60% of people. I might have the numbers wrong here, but it was something like 60%, maybe more, of men said that they were affiliated with a church or religion. And in
Yes.
recent surveys, it's like what, like 10% or something? Maybe it's
Yes.
20%. It's very, very low. And that's
Yes.
just for men. That's just for men being surveyed. And so, of course, people, just as a natural human tendency, we look for a leader. We look for someone to show us the way. Men and women do. We look for someone to show us the way, and look at the models that we have out there. Because if you're going to, you know, ignore the church, what else is there? Celebrity, all kinds of stuff that leads us in the wrong direction. Even if it's temporary, it can have devastating consequences. You can get
Yeah.
pregnant by the wrong man. You can get the wrong woman pregnant. That right there, that's huge. You could become a drug addict, or, use a drug that has fentanyl in it one time, and
Yes.
that's it.
You mentioned something there. You talked about church. The rates of women going to church and men going to church are vastly different. There are more women going to church
Mm.
right now than men. And there's a reason for it. The structure. Men crave structure and order. And there's more of a lot of the feel good stuff that don't
Mhm.
appeal to men, right? The emotional appeals and so forth, which are more appealing to women than their men. Like, obviously, you need some of it, but you have to can't cater more to one side than the other, because then if you do this, then you'll see what happens. There's less men, because men are like, well, what do I want that for, right? Like, I mean, you need to have. They're not actually catering to men. A lot of them are not, and that's what the problem is. And when men are the ones who are setting the boundaries for society and the structure of society, if they're not learning a foundation of a boundary, or have a common set of goals and beliefs, then society begins to go off, because then everybody does what's right in their own eyes, and that becomes a problem, because it's like, try building something without having a set of instructions. Everybody's using their
Mhm.
own standard of measure, right? It can't work. So at least you need to have some commonality. Obviously, not everybody has to think same, but you need to have some basis under which to build on. Otherwise, you won't get any.
Well, yeah, because whether you have, back when I was a kid, like in the 60s, and 70s, there was a defined, it was like, at least on the surface anyway, from what we could tell, like there was a Democratic Party and a Republican Party. And then you would have, sometimes third party folks, but they weren't hell bent on destroying the structures of our society. And I feel like now when people think of the Democratic Party and think of progressives, it's like they are trying to tear down the structures of the structures that are like of the family, right? The family, the
Yes.
church, and how now it's, people get made fun of for being Christian and have for a long time. Like that's been going on for a long time.
Oh,
And like
yes.
you're not cool. You're not cool if you're Christian, but it's cool to be Buddhist or to be some of these other religions. It was okay for you to talk about that and share your experiences with that. But if you wanted to talk about being Christian, you were considered to be just ignorant or some kind of Bible thumper or just some kind of just a moron. Like, what are you talking about that for? And that's been such a huge shift lately. I don't know when that happened, but I don't know if you agree or not that it used to be that politicians were civil to one another and had the same goal of bettering our country. Just because they had differing views on what that was, the goal was the same.
Yes. I mean, they couldn't have gotten away with doing what they're doing now then and just straight up selling out your country. That would have never flown before. But they had to break down our moral structure, and it comes down into the family. So, family is where you first learn your structure and order. And if your structure and order are being broken down in the families, you can't expect them to learn them out in the world. It's easier for them to be molded into whatever feels good, right? Because there's nothing wrong with feeling good. Don't get me wrong. But just because you feels good doesn't mean you should do it. Because drugs feel good to a drug addict, alcohol feels good to an
Mhm.
alcoholic, doesn't mean they should drink or do drugs, right? So this is where we have to start putting our thinking caps on that aspect and so forth. Thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, well, because when the family breaks down, and then what happens is people start relying on institutions. So that's where you get people institutionalized even in prisons, and then you're indoctrinated there. You're indoctrinated into our sometimes wacky healthcare system. You're just all these things that used to be, I'm not talking about prison now, but it's like, these institutions that used to be venerated and respected. And like, yeah, that's where you go we share ideas about our culture, and that's where kids learned how to be good citizens. Like civics was part of being in school, and being a student was you learned about how things worked so that you knew how to behave in the world and so that you could contribute. And it just seems now it feels like everyone is out for themselves or some future version of us that has nothing to do with anything that's going on now, like some imaginary future that's very dystopian. That's who we're supposed to be looking out for. It's like, what is happening? And instead of getting real and being real with what is in front of us, we've abandoned all of that. Like it's beyond practicality now.
Well,
It just seems like it's this nebulous, bizarre thing. And I think it's by design so that we can't hope. People like you and me, we have a different viewpoint of the world because we've been in the world, but, like, for younger people, like, "Oh my lord, I don't
yeah,
like what I see."
no, and a lot of it is changing, like moving people off of that standard where they had structure and morality. And there's room for people that think differently. This is
Mhm.
fine because not everybody's going to think identically in every way. But we need to have a common set of things where certain things that we know, if you steal, that's wrong. Don't do it, right? Don't incentivize people for bad behavior, which is what seems to happen a lot. And the, like bring it back to the relationship aspect, right? This is something that I've watched over the years in my life. I would watch sometimes girls get together and they would talk, and they would tell one girl to do something that they would none of the other girls would do, And they would watch that girl do it, and she would sabotage herself. Like, and generally, a lot of this time was in regards to relationships, or the girls that were angry would get together and they would just have that vent fest. And then the girl that was not angry ended up becoming angry because of being around the other girls that were venting. And social media
Mhm.
has helped accelerate this, right? When I look at some of the posts, and for example, the red pill stuff is actually helping to put some gasoline on the fire. Um, I'm gonna pull up a clip here of a girl that actually is talking about this. And she's like, some of the stuff she says is justified, and I've looked at some of her stuff before. But we'll bring this up and I hear your thoughts on this.
Every time I have
Oh boy.
interactions with men, I am just more and more appalled and disgusted by men and the behavior of men towards women. Like, dating in my early 20s, men actually had respect for women, relatively. You at least felt like a human being around them. You know, you at least felt like they saw you as a human and not just an object. But the increase in all of these red pill podcasts and women hating behavior on the internet has literally poisoned the minds of men. And it was to the point that I just stopped dating entirely for the last 6 months or so. I've been trying to give dating a chance again lately. I've even been like trying to date guys who are not, you know, my typical type. Yeah, even dating guys who are not my typical type has not fixed the issue. In fact, actually, it's worse. What the fuck is a girl to do? Give up? I always have dated guys who were like 10, 15 years older than me, because I've been dating guys around my age lately, and that shit, girl, no.
Yeah, I'm
So we're just gonna we're gonna
I'm
sit here in
looking at you
silence.
because you're the woman,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah, I was trying to compose myself. Um, the funny thing is I hear this same thing from the men that I coach. They start off talking like this, and then they realize that what they're saying is nonsense. And I think because because it's how you are in the world. What are your thoughts? How do you think about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? How are you presenting yourself in the world? Depends on what kind of people that you attract into your orbit. And then you're not always going to attract winners, just like, on a daily basis. You're not always going to attract, great experiences, but who she's attracting is a reflection of what's going on inside of her
Yeah,
because of just her thoughts, the things that she allows.
yeah,
Because if you have standards and boundaries, you're going to see right away every single time any of us have ever made a mistake in a relationship, unless this person was some kind of manipulative mastermind, right? We saw red flags and we ignored them.
yes, and
Right. It's like, come on, come on. And that's great news. That's good news because then we can go, oh, yeah, I did see. I do have wisdom.
and you,
Thank you. That's what she's abandoning her wisdom. She's obviously an attractive woman, well spoken.
yeah,
There's little needs to, I mean, she's on YouTube. You're different when you're talking in a video here. Like I'm a little more,
yes,
I'm a little different than I'm sitting talking to my husband or when we're talking on the phone or something. But
yes,
it's, so I know she's presenting herself a little more, what's the word I want to use? Maybe a little more bold, a little stronger.
yes,
So she sounds a tiny bit angry, but she also, you could tell she also kind of has a sense of humor.
yes.
So I wonder if it's true, or I wonder if she's just
Well, I mean,
talking for clicks.
I've seen some of her stuff. Like she talked about an ex-boyfriend and stuff like that that she did stuff. So I think she's a little jaded on that aspect because he started to watch the red pill and she's like, then he changed and then other stuff. Yeah. And so
I wonder what made him feel like he needed to watch the red pill stuff.
I don't
I mean, I'm
know.
not no reflection on her. I mean, I'm just wondering, because if someone's watching that, it's because they're dissatisfied. No one's
Yeah,
just like, "Oh, hey, cool. What's this? Oh, wow, I'm gonna binge watch this." It's hitting something. It's striking a nerve. He didn't feel empowered in
yes,
his relationship, obviously.
y- yes, and
Diagnosing from far away, but that's right. There's, our actions are clues to what's going on inside of us.
yes, they ultimately what we think we will act out. It's only a matter of time, right? And
I
so,
know. You have to be real clear on who you are and what you want because you're gonna get it.
well, and when you have sex with people like early, you will disregard red flags because
Mhm.
of it clouds your judgment. Like I say, like when it comes to relationships, sex is worse than drugs. It impairs your brain badly. And then you get into a situation where you're like, why did I do this? Right? This
Mhm.
is why people need to back away from that so that they can clearly start seeing. And obviously you're never going to know 100%, but you'll have a higher success rate when you begin to like see if a person like is going to interact with you well and take that time. And for a woman, if a man is going to be willing to invest in you and grow with you, then without getting into your pants, he's willing to work for you. That means he values you, right? And we're not
Yes.
just talking about 3 months, you're talking about like you're building a foundation, not just as somebody biding their time because they're going to do other things, but you're going to see things in a much clearer manner. Like,
Yeah, and I taught this course. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, but when I was pretty much just exclusively coaching women, and now I pretty much just exclusively coach men, just a kind of a flip that I did not try to make happen. It just happened because my message was more resonant with men than it was with women. um, I taught this course. Well, it was the working title was Stop Dating Losers. And what it was is stop being seduced into too soon sex. And I explained all the things that go on in a woman's brain and body that happen when you meet a man, and men's bodies know how to seduce women's bodies. Even if the man in question does not really know what he's doing, his body knows what to do. And a man who's confident will lead with his body instead of being caught up in his head and thoughts. He'll lead with his body. So he'll be reaching out and touching a woman. Anytime a man touches a woman, even on the hand, even through the sleeve of your blouse, he's stimulating her oxytocin. That is a bonding hormone. It's nature made it that way, right? That's why, moms hold babies and babies instinctively, they paw all over mom because they know that keeps mom bonded to baby. And so without getting into a whole lot of detail about that, all of these attraction hormones, the sexual that cause sexual chemistry and make a woman think, "Oh my gosh, God sent this man to me because there's no way that I could feel this way about him unless this was real and true. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move a little faster with him because this is really something special." Mistake. A lot of women make that mistake. Even women who call themselves, godly and go to church because they feel this super strong sexual chemistry with a man. And they, like I said, they think, well, God, this must be meant to be. This is meant to be. And those chemicals last for 90 days. That's when they start to dissipate, is around the 90-day mark. And that's why so many people are kind of like the queen or the king of that 3-month relationship. Because if, like you were saying earlier, Dale, if there's no other foundation but sexual attraction, then the relationship will end because there's nothing else there since the sexual chemistry is now gone. Because there's other chemicals and other things that happen in our brains and our bodies that when we have this emotional connection with someone, there's even more and stronger in different ones, a little different chemical cocktail that happens. And then it starts to happen in men. But men, generally speaking, fall in love much faster than women do. which I think is interesting. But yeah, so a lot of women, that 90 days though, right? That's enough time to really get serious with somebody, right? That's enough time to get pregnant. That's enough time to move in with somebody. You know, that's enough time to, introduce them to, especially if you're moving fast. But what I noticed about women who tend to be promiscuous, because those are the women that I was coaching, is like, okay, look, the reason you're getting into these crappy relationships is because they're based on these bad boys who bring that sexual heat and that charisma, and you're getting caught up in that, right? And so it's like, and these are women that own their own businesses. They
Yes.
own a beautiful home. They have gorgeous
I,
adult children who are also successful. And then they're attracting these men who are literal criminals because the men bring this masculine energy that they're not used to experiencing.
I,
And it messes up their lives.
we will talk about this on the next segment. We're running up on
Okay.
time because we need to get into this because that's something I wanted to actually touch on. So I'll close this segment here with a prayer and then we'll get over to this on the next side. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us today, this day, and help us that we would be able to reach someone to help them get into the right direction, to make some better decisions, and get men and women to come together to start reevaluating their relationships so that they can rebuild their families, their churches, their community, and their nation, and most importantly, to keep the children protected and to grow them up to be sensible adults is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. And so keep watching, and we'll come back on the other side, and we're going to start talking about the differences in the relationships and what men and women are going to be going through in that aspect so that we can start addressing this, because that is something that really needs to get looked at. And oh, wait a second, I just missed something. There we go. I'm a little slow today, but we will be back in a few minutes. And if you're watching on Lindell TV, you'll see it the next day.
Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin.
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you, everybody, for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next half of Divergent Discussions here with Mary Knight. And you touched on a little bit of that, the desire of women, that many of them are successful in owning businesses that end up going after some of these guys that are like criminals and the bad boy types and so forth. So you want to kind of just go in a little bit of that, because I can give some observations, but you understand the mindset of a woman. So you want to kind of get into why they do this. Like, what's in their mindset? Why?
Yeah. A lot of it is because that bad boy type knows how to see a woman. Like, really look at a woman and see her for the sexual creature that she is. These men don't focus on, oh, she's a mom, she's works at the PTA, she's a business owner, she's a sister, she's a grandma. They focus on, oh, she's a woman, and I like women, and I like sex. And they are unapologetic about that desire. And that feels really good to all women. Now, depending on who you are as a woman, you you may enjoy that attention and your body, because your body will feel that. But if you're an experienced woman or a woman that has good boundaries or values or wisdom, you're not going to fall for that guy. You're just not, because you know better. But it's usually younger women who fall for those guys, and then experience tells them, "Oh yeah, that's not man for me." But yeah, and so that's why women who have their lives together, who are accomplished, who are successful in every way, except this one, will fall for this type of man, simply because he sees her as a woman. And a woman will put up with a lot of nonsense if a man knows how to take care of her in the bedroom. The same with men, right? Men will put up with a lot of nonsense. Or, they talk about the crazy hot woman. Well, there's crazy hot men too.
Well, yes, and this is where people have to use reason and so forth, because just because it looks good doesn't mean that it is good. And I see some guys, and they're not the most attractive, I ain't gonna lie, and they still are
Mm.
doing these types of things because they manipulate women's feelings and so forth. Men are very good at reading actions. We have to be, because we have to detect deception in other men that might try to take us out in order to protect our families. And men are very good at hiding things. So a man has to be able, if you can detect that in a man hiding his emotions, he has to be, it's a lot easier for him to detect them in a woman. He doesn't have to understand the way that she thinks, but he can see how she reacts to things, right? And
Yeah. And oh, I'm sorry.
no,
I,
this
I,
is this is what a lot of these men do. Like, because we don't understand the way you guys think. We just watch the way you react.
and I mentioned this a little earlier, maybe it was in the last segment, about how most people, they're not these master manipulators. Like a man who does that, I would bet, well, I know from experience too, most of those men, like 99% of those men, they are not consciously doing this. Some of them are because they're con artists, right? Or they're players, right? So they'll just say what a woman wants to hear to get her into bed. But most men, they're just kind of going along. Like a man who participates in this kind of behavior, where he's, finding these women and basically they're his sugar mama. I don't think it's like a conscious thing most of the time. They kind of lucked into it, because they go after so many women. Eventually, somebody's going to be able to take care of them. So it's just one of those things too, because um, because I don't want, women to get the idea that, there's these men that they're out there and they're after you and they're going to get you. It's easy to avoid if you're, using your wisdom and your common sense and your discernment and not sleep with them right
Well,
away.
well,
That's the big thing.
what ends up happening is that he's not disciplined in how he deals with women. He's not. This
Mhm.
is this is because you're naturally going to want to gravitate to women in certain situations. If a man pays attention to himself, he understands this. And this is why the man has to sit down and set boundaries, because especially if a woman is in some type of distress, the natural reaction of a man is to want to go and help. This is, we're wired this way. And so when we do these things, we're going to start drawing things out of the woman, and a man has to sit down and say, well, I can't do these things because I don't want that reaction from that type of woman, even if she may want it, because I need to see whether or not this is something that we should do. Like, because I mean, yes, you have that crazy hot girl that, like, You know what I mean? Like you have like some instant, like almost like magnetic pull to, but you have to sit down and say, well, was that reasonable? Right? Right?
Right, and that's where having boundaries and values comes in, is because then you might entertain it for, like, a split second, but you're certainly not gonna engage in something like that. Because, yeah, there's so many men that I coach that are involved in a relationship with an escort, or they're involved in a relationship with a woman where they aren't having their needs met, meaning the men aren't having their needs met, and they stay in these relationships. And I don't know if we want to get up on this topic, but it's because they confuse the difference between sympathy and empathy. And they are, like what you're saying, they see a woman in distress and they want to help her. And it's not that these women are, again, these master manipulators. It's just how they are. And then men respond to that and they get what they want. And so they just keep doing it.
The-
It's not like, "Oh, if I act sad, I'll get what I want." No, it's like that's how they are. And so it's not like a bunch of women going around, "Oh, I'm gonna try to get this man." It's men falling for it.
I actually had a conversation with my daughter about this because she would get angry about seeing women doing things like this. And I said it's a consequence. When you see men and women doing a lot of these things, a lot of it is factors that happened in their life. For example, say if they were abused, it's going to change their boundaries and the way that they do things, and it becomes autonomic to them. A lot of the times they don't realize the way what they're doing because it becomes second nature. You have to teach them to pay attention to what's going on because everything we do is actually a decision process. It happens so fast, and when we do it routinely, that it seems like it's almost unconscious. But if you actually
Mhm.
plug in their brain to an EKG or some, or sorry, in oh, I can't even think of the name of it. But if you're monitoring their brain, you'll see the neurons fire, and it's definitely conscious, but we're just so used to it. So this is what
Yeah.
happens. Yes.
I agree. I'm so glad to hear you say that because I hear other coaches say that attraction is a choice. And I'm like, no, that attraction is not a choice. And I'm like, yes, attraction is a choice. Just because you're not consciously aware, you're making so many decisions that lead you to the point where you've decided that this person is for you.
Yes.
Even if it's just for the night. And that's part of that what I was talking about, in the last segment was teaching women about what was going on in their brains and their bodies that made them, feel attraction for certain types of men, even when they're saying, "I know better. I don't wanna fall for that guy, but yet I keep dating the same man over and over again." What is it? Different man, same crap, like over and over and over again. And so I break down what's going on in their brain and their body because what's happened is they have formed a habit. Like who you're attracted to, who you date, who you love is a habit. And you can change that. That's how I was able to change my life. From going from somebody who was a sex worker, had been married and divorced 3 times, to going to retiring from that, starting a new life, then meeting a man and being with him for 11 years now. It's like it didn't just happen. I wasn't lucky. I had to consciously unwind a lot of stuff to get to where I am. And if I did it, I'm like, I did it, anybody can do it. Not to take anything away from me, but it's not that I mean, I barely graduated from high school. It's not that I have this super education. It's just, yeah, it was a decision that I made. I made choices that I was sick of the way that the outcomes I was getting. And I knew that I was responsible for my outcomes. Nobody else, just me. That's
Yes.
it.
Sorry, go ahead.
And that's what, yeah, that's what happened. And so when I was talking earlier about, women are being in the habit of dating these bad boys, women who also are in the habit of sleeping with men right away, your body gets used to that. And so when you start dating and you're sitting across from it and you've decided, okay, I'm not going to sleep with him on the first date. I'm not going to do that. Your body will actually send signals to you that something is wrong because it's like, hey, this is the part where we get the dopamine. This is the part where you're supposed to do this, this, and this, and you're not doing it. And so your body is telling you, your brain is sending signals to your brain saying, something is wrong. Something is wrong. We're in danger. You have to fix this. It's as simple as that, but it's unwinding all that. And it's fascinating. And a lot of times once you see it for what it is, you're like, oh, this is how that feels right before I do this thing that I said I wasn't going to do. And it's true
Yes.
of alcohol, of overeating, of
Yes.
porn, all
Yes.
that. It's all the same. Sleeping with somebody too soon, getting
You
involved with a certain type of man or woman.
you are you are training your brain to be that way. And then you are
Yes.
going to then form your character to be that way. But some things, when they're based on impulse control, you're wiring yourself for having no impulse control, which
Mhm.
then is critical for things like addiction and compulsion, whatever you want to say. For like the process is going to be virtually identical in your brain, whether it's a drug, whether it's sex, whether it's eating, whatever, because you're gratifying your pleasure centers and your judgment centers that restrain your being overridden.
Well, yeah, and it's why it's so easy to get I call it this all the time, cheap thrills, because that's what it is. It's like that's what scrolling social media and seeing how many likes you have or liking things or watching things and all these things. It's like it's hitting your brain with dopamine. And the thing about dopamine is it's not just a feel good chemical, it's also a messenger. It's a messenger to your brain that says, "Oh, hey, this activity is necessary for survival. So we need to keep doing this." And that's how it's so easy for especially kids to get addicted to devices. It's why people can easily get addicted to like socially acceptable behaviors like that.
This is also why, even with a relationship as a parent, you can't just be the fun parent. You have to build that foundation because when you do that for your child, you teach them and prepare them for doing these types of things in life. And then your relationships, you can never get the most out of your relationships on a monogamous level by going for cheap, quick fixes on dopamine. Because, like, I sit down and say, it takes time to draw these things out. Like, I mean, whenever I have a relationship and things go sideways, I go back and I reflect on myself and I look specifically for what I did wrong and what I can do better because
Mhm.
I can see what the other person does clearly. It's not very hard, but it's more difficult for me to see myself and have a real conversation and say, okay, where did I go wrong? What can I fix? Because I don't want to bring this thing to the next person. And I want to deal with any issues with resentment that I have. Because if I hold resentment towards a woman, I'm going to direct it to the next person. And resentment will make you weaker over time and it'll destroy you like a cancer.
Well, yeah, because when you resent somebody, you're giving them your power, right? Because you're blaming them. And so when you blame someone, you're by definition their victim. And I know a lot of men, I talk about that, and they don't like thinking of themselves that way, that they're a victim to women. It's like, well, then change the way that you're thinking about the situations that you've been in or that you're currently in, because whoever you blame has all the power over you, all of it. Right? It's like if you're, oh, I need them to say they're sorry. No, you don't. No, you don't.
True. It's true. It or
Leave them alone.
or
If y'all have broken up, leave them alone. They don't need no, you don't need anything from them. You don't need their forgiveness, and you don't need
no,
theirs,
no, or
or they
somebody
don't need
said
your yeah.
or somebody who says, "Well, they did this, so I did this." No, you didn't. Why are you giving away people control? Because if somebody does something and you react to them, then you've just handed your power over to them. you have yielded control. And I'm a person, I don't like being controlled by people. So my biggest focus is being disciplined over myself. And so for me, when I look at going to be disciplined, I go to God, right? Because God can help me do things that I could not do by myself. And so I'm like, well, I want more of that. So I'm going to listen to what you say, right? Because I don't like people manipulating, right?
I know that was for me too. So many times I've said, God, I cannot do this on my own. I cannot handle this. You have to take this from me. Please take this from me. And then I have trained myself, or because it happened well so many times, that's where faith comes in, right? I said train myself, but really trained myself to have faith, right? Train myself to say it and leave it alone and not keep revisiting it. Like, oh, I wonder if he's doing that. I wonder if God's doing that. I wonder if it's working. It's like, nope, I'm not doing that. And that's where so much peace comes from too, right? It's just having that faith and knowing that it's working.
Y-
I don't have to mess with it anymore because obviously I can't. I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I'm in this mess, and the same kind of thinking is not going to get me out of it. Yeah, I know that's a
it-
lot. God is such a big help in relationships. Oh my
y-
gosh.
yes, and
Woo.
and for speaking of faith, like I just wanted to kind of touch on that because a lot of people talk about faith, but they don't actually know what it is. And there's a really good example in the Bible where Jesus is talking to the centurion. He walks up and he meets him. And he's like, I'll come to your house and heal your servant. And the centurion checks him and says, no, you don't need to come to my house. All you have to do is say the word, and my servant will be healed. And then he goes and he explains it. He goes, I'm a man of rank and power. When I say something, somebody carries out my will. It will be done because I said it. And he said, with you, all you need to do is say the word, and my servant will be healed. So then he trusted in God's word and depended on his word to do exactly what he said. And he went home, and what happened? His servant healed. So when you have that belief, it has to then translate into an action. You don't have to worry. It may not come in the time that we want it to, but there's enough examples because I've looked at, I had issues with substances and sober. God helped me through that. I had issues with other things. God helped me through that. Like, no matter what I give to him, when I give it to him, he helps me through it. So I can have this huge thing in front of me. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through it, but you got me through all that stuff. So I'm just going to keep going forward. Right. Like,
Mhm.
right. Makes life easier.
Right. But you have to, I know for me, I have to catch myself sometimes though and go, wait, why am I acting like a maniac internally? Why am I fretting? Why am I giving this so much of my energy and my power when I'm not the one making this happen? Let me go back to God and say, okay, I get it. Thank you for the reminder. All right. It's in your hands now. Thanks again for that reminder though. But yeah, because I guess it's just part of being human, right? It's
Yes.
constantly thinking. The way our brains work, it's like, oh, hey, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and I need to put in all this effort and strife and struggle. And it's like, no, no, I don't. I know what to do.
But it becomes
And
easier the more you do it.
hmm it does. It does. And then the next crazy thing comes up and you're like, oh, wow, okay. All right, here we go again. Or some more. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. For me, I have to remind myself, especially, since building a YouTube channel and I've had some fast growth and then I've gotten because of the things I talk about, um, the red pill community doesn't like what I have to say. A lot of men like what I have to say. A lot of Christian men like what I have to say. Um, but it's knowing that the comments don't matter. I get a lot of positive comments, but of course, the ones I fixate on are some of the negative ones. And they're not even really about me. They're
Yes.
just about women, and I'm like, "What?" And I was getting caught up in that and feeling really terrible, and then I'm feeling not feeling bad about myself, feeling angry because they're just wrong, it's stupid,
Y-
and I had to the only way I've been able to carry on and continue to put out YouTube videos is by putting it in God's hands, and that's one of the things I say, one of my prayers is that, guide me to share your message and your word in only the way that I can. and I just have to let it go. And that's how I even started a YouTube channel, because I didn't want to get on YouTube and go, "Hey, everybody, guess what I used to do?" And talk about that. I
Yes,
didn't.
I we're gonna pull something up after this because you mentioned something about this, and a lot of this has to do with the red pill and the way that they're against this idea of monogamy and the idea of women and
Oh,
what they're
yeah.
doing. Because I'll tell you why they do it, but we'll take a little break here because I know this will go into a little bit longer. First of all, I'll
Okay.
take the break and then I'll play the clip and then we'll go into why they are nasty, even though what you're saying makes sense.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
So if anybody needs any of the MyPillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis. There's other ways to support, or if you're watching on Rumble, BitChute, or oh wow, Facebook. That's it. You can see the links in the description. Just a brain freeze, brain fart, like kind of thing. It happens, but you get the
You
point.
need some of that. You need some Rev 7.
Yeah, maybe. All right, but yeah, so kind of back to this whole idea, like with what we were talking about before. Um, a lot of the guys in the red pill, they're very negative towards women. I'm going to pull up a clip from Myron Gaines, and this will just kind of
Oh,
address a
boy.
little bit of what you're saying because he's talking to some girls about this, and we'll see it.
If we were having a debate on nails and acrylic, I wouldn't sit here and try to debate with you guys on that because clearly you would be more educated on it. I'd be like, damn, you know what? I don't really know about this. I will defer authority to them so they can speak about this. But you guys are speaking about this from a narrow-minded, uneducated, unaware point with people that talk about this all the time and have the numbers on their side. That is one of the big differences between men and women. When men are intellectually outclassed, they shut up and listen. When women are intellectually outclassed, you guys want to sit here and try to argue and prove your point. When in reality, a lot of you are double-digit IQ. Okay? No offense. This is why, for a very long time, women have been second-class citizens. Because you guys lack the ability to reason and logic. I gave you a chance to literally make an argument why women are better. Yeah, and you went ahead and said, by being in the government. What government? Every world power is run by men. Every country that has nukes is run by men. What are you talking about?
Now, I'm going to say something here because what they're doing here is very wrong. This is again where you're judging a woman by a man's standard, and then like punishing her because she's not going to perform in the same way as a man in male dominated areas. That's an unfair comparison, right? And then the ideals is that if a woman comes in, when you have this mindset, a woman comes in and says something to you that's correct, you're gonna get angry with you. But if a man says it, they're not. This is why on a lot of the times when I say stuff on social media, men say nothing. They say nothing. When I see them in face to face, they will not say anything because I reason it out and it's like a man. And if they do what they do to women to try to do that to a man, other men are going to be like, they're going to have zero respect for them. They're going to laugh at them and they're going to know exactly what's going on. And they take advantage of women in doing this. And this is just a very wrong mindset when you have an emotional man that is not disciplined, right? because women say things all the time that irritate men. We just need to control ourselves. Understand they're different. Go ahead.
Women irritate men?
Some of the things they say, yes.
I can't. I'm teasing. Yeah, yeah. Well, also for him, he's obviously a very out of balance type of man to sit there be laughing like a bunch of hyenas at people, and too, they don't have women in there that are adults. And I mean, maybe chronologically those women are adults, but it's not like they have some. Do they ever have women with advanced degrees in there that actually are experts in sexuality and dating and relationships and all the kinds of things that we're talking about? I don't know if they. I've never seen that show, so I don't know. Or is that like a bunch of OnlyFans girls?
They
Nothing against the OnlyFans girls, but like those girls look like they're 18. They don't
yes,
look like they're have life experience.
this is one of the things about the red pill that they do. They have a lot of older men that will go after these younger women. Well, first of all, of course, they're going to seem like a child to you if they're young enough to be your child. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
this is not rocket science, right? This is why when I sit down and I look at people, I'm like, okay, sure, someone that's in their 20s, they might look attractive, but you still look like a child to me in my mind. Your body might look like a woman, but I look at your face, you look like a child, and then I listen to you talk, and it's even worse because you're mentally not there. You don't have not like you're stupid, but you don't have that experience in life. When I talk to a woman that's in like sort of my age range, I can sit down and say, okay, I feel like I'm talking to a peer because there's comparable levels of life experience that I can sit down and relate to. But I don't have to feel like I'm teaching my child, right? I don't want that.
Mhm. Well, no, of course not, because you're a mature man. Yeah, I was talking about my husband with this the other day about how we just think everybody looks so young, like wildly young. Like my daughter is a doctor. She is a medical doctor, and she looks so young to me still. She's almost 40. She's 38, and she still looks so young to me, like a baby. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And and then my dentist looks like he's I don't know how old he is, 30? It's like, I have a child. I have 3 children older than you. That's the it's so everybody does just look so young, just, because of my advancing in age, but it's men. Well, so I will say this about so in my comments, I said, that I do have so maybe out of, say 200 comments, maybe 5 will be negative about women and about marriage. And one that I see is like, oh, well, women just don't have a sex drive. Well, what happens in these cases is that the men in my comments will jump on those men and say, that says more about you than it does about the woman. Women do have sex drives. And they're like, my woman has a sex drive, so it's you, man. Or things about, oh, all women want they're all about chaos and drama, and they're just they're all about how they feel and not about anything that's logical or rational or makes sense. And then a bunch of guys will actually like that comment. I'm like, what? Why are you even watching my videos? Because then I'm thinking, well, did you not watch the video? So other men are checking the other men in the comments, which is nice because I'm not. Sometimes I respond, but most of the time I don't.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes they'll say, "Oh, why are you coaching men? You shouldn't be coaching men." It's like, I'm coaching men because men asked me to.
Yes.
I otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. They asked me to,
It
because of my life experiences.
well, they're coming to you for a woman's perspective, not because they're
Yes,
asking you to teach them to be a man. Which is
exactly.
very fundamentally different. Because if I want to know something about a woman, I will go to a woman and ask a woman because a man is just as clueless as I am, and probably a lot of the times more than I am about women, because I grew up with 5 women in my household. So I very understand that we are very different. And so that's usually why. But yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm not giving and I say that, it's like on my channel often, it's like, "I'm not here to teach you how to be a man. I can't do that because I'm not a man." I'm simply giving you my perspective, as a woman with a lot of experience, in part because of my age, also because I was a madam, I was an escort, I've been married, I'm a mom, I know a lot of stuff about the ways of women, right? And also about women who aren't the most healthy, women who were sex workers, and just giving that perspective, because a lot of men get really confused about that and think that they need to rescue these women and that they're going to do it by being their best client.
That that
And it's
that
like, okay, guys, that's very self-serving. Come on.
that's not the way you do that, and I'll tell you that right
No.
now. For one, like my oldest daughter, her mother was a sex worker, and I dated a couple of them in my younger years, and that's really not what you want to do, right? Like I look at the situation, you understand, unless somebody wants to do something, you will never get that person to do something unless they don't already want to do it. Like some people that, and this is what you have to be able to engage in. And then being in a sexual relationship is the fastest way to make sure that that becomes a train wreck. And then on top of it,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
nature of what that specific relationship with, because I would hear these kinds of things and what the conversations were on the other end and so forth, because not only did I mean, grew up around a lot of people that were like that, and I heard these things and I was like, yeah, dude, don't do that.
Well, right, that's the case of someone who is caught up in the sexual part of the relationship, and the physical part, and the superficial part. And usually it's men who either don't have a lot of experience with that, and so they're easily manipulated, not on purpose by the escort, but by their own bodies, right? Because they're like, "Oh my gosh, she must love me because she's letting me touch her and letting me have sex with her." And that's when he's finally rejected by that woman who's like, "Hey, this is my job. I like you as a person. I like you as a man. I love that you're my client, but this isn't going anywhere." Some men get it and they're like, "Oh, I feel like a fool." And then some men are like, "Okay, I know." And then other men will turn to the red pill community. You know, but I do get a lot of props for being, a retired sex worker. "Oh, they're the only honest women," and all these kind of comments. "Oh, it's cheaper to rent a woman than marry her," and, just all these
Uh,
kinds of comments.
uh,
It's like, "Okay, all right, fellas, calm down."
anybody
You know?
anybody who has said that it's cheaper to rent a woman than to marry her, they have no idea what they're talking about. They have zero idea, because what you get out of a monogamous relationship in a marriage, it is impossible to buy with money. And this is what people have to understand. This is monogamy. Out of all of the relationships that I've examined and looked at and observed throughout the course of my life and so forth, it yields the most benefit to a human being if they're willing to put in the work. And this is what comes down to it, because the most beneficial things in life, they come with work. And for the man to get the most of a man has to work. Man values what he works for. When a man is focused on learning everything he can about a woman in order to help draw out the best in her, this is how this is going to work. Because when I look at a woman and I go to assess, I have to sit down and see if there's compatible qualities. Sure, she has to have a certain level of attractiveness for me to come in and have that conversation, but I don't have to have the woman that I think is an absolute 10. Obviously, if you could have everything you want, who wouldn't want that? But there are most important things are the attributes that she has, the character that she possesses, and those things that I can work with, because I can't live with your looks. Your looks don't help me to grow as a person. They don't. Like, they don't. So,
And they fade.
yes, but the like the number one things that I look for, intelligence, because I can't sit down and have a conversation like if I feel like I'm talking to a plant. And that goes for my friends. Like, I can't have
Mhm.
do you know what I mean? If you're dragging your knuckles on the ground, I can't hang out with you. Sorry, dude. Like, I mean, I can help you, but we don't have anything in common. Same thing if I'm gonna have somebody, what am I gonna talk to you over dinner for the rest of my life? Right? If I can't answer that question, I can't go further, right? Like, integrity, like doing right things and wanting to have right principles, and have, do your values align? Do you like helping other people? Because that's what I like to do. I like to give back. So I want somebody who can enjoy that with me. If you don't like giving back, then we're going to have problems, because you're going to be like, why are you doing that all the time? Well, because it's the right thing to do, right? Like, sure,
Right. That's
wha-
yeah, your values.
so that's what people need to start looking at. They'll get more success that way.
Well, so don't you think, just from a man's perspective, like, so as far as monogamy goes, even though the feminine surrenders to the masculine doesn't surrender to the feminine, but doesn't the masculine have to surrender to the commitment or to the monogamy? Or is that just the way that I think about it? Like, because I know there's some vulnerability that's required too,
Yeah,
which feels really good. Like, within like, to me as a woman, knowing that I can be vulnerable, to me that's the same as it's the same as surrender. But it's like, yeah, it's so I'm just curious about that from your perspective, and so we can, people can really understand, well, what are we even talking about when we say this monogamy, and this the beauty of that relationship, which is, for the first time in my life, I'm experiencing, because my husband and I met, we were both 49. Both of us were 49. And it was just amazing the way that it all played out. And we got to know each other before we had sex. We didn't wait for marriage to have sex, but we got to know each other before we had sex, which was something I had always wanted to do.
mhm,
And it worked. It worked because I didn't get caught up in the temptation of not really seeing him because my judgment was clouded
yes.
by the sexual chemistry, just all those things that we talked about earlier. And it allowed for that real foundation to build. It allowed for me to really see him for who he was, and then ask him questions if I wanted clarification, instead of going, "Oh, it'll be fine." Like, really getting to know him and asking him to explain, "Oh, well, what did you mean by that?" Or what do you think about this or that? Or, just these very simple things that once you got this sexual chemistry going, all that really does go out the window a lot more than people think, especially if you have a sexual past where your body is used to falling into those chemicals and really letting them wash over you, and just, giving yourself over to it.
You see, and also when people have sexual, like, high sex drive and a lot of sexual energy or potential, or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't mean that you always have to just have sex with a person. You
Mhm.
can use that in other ways to show affection and intimacy with that person, to help grow and build to it, so that when you get to that point and then you start doing this, you're going to have a more fulfilling sex life, because you've then built that foundation, that security. But also, kind of circling back to what you're asking, men don't necessarily surrender to the woman. What they do is they open themselves up to her, and she becomes like a part of himself, right? Men bind themselves to their women in a way that they see her like himself, except she's like the part of him that needs to be protected. And so when a man draws a woman in, this means that he will give his life for you. He will give you absolutely everything. We are wired for loyalty. Monogamy is the best way to get the best out of a man, because then he will put all of his attention to you and helping you to become the best version of yourself so that you will draw closer and become part of his heart.
Yeah. So do you think of that as not like surrendering to the woman, but as surrendering to commitment? Or again, maybe the word I'm using is just wrong because that's the way that I see it. That's the way
Well,
I experience it.
they they we should want to embrace the commitment and so forth. And I guess you could sit down and say that, but in a, like, for example, in a Christian dynamic, the woman is going to watch her husband surrender himself to God in order
God.
for her to see that she can surrender to him because he is leading by example. And then what she sees about God or Jesus, he's going to be able to learn more about that from the male aspects from her husband by seeing God acting out in her husband.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it's
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, just because I know that the experience that I have is different.
yes,
Because the way that I look at the world is different, and so I look at it in those kinds of terms, which are very comfortable to me. They didn't
yes.
used to be. The idea of surrendering to anything and anyone was just so repellent to me.
It,
Like, oh, how dare you? Kind of feeling, because I'd never experienced a, a wonderful masculine presence.
it's like him opening, it's like him putting down his defenses, disarming him, so to speak, where
Okay.
you would not see those parts of the man because this he's got this barrier that comes up, and nobody would normally get into that barrier, so he's letting his defenses down and letting you in. So
Okay. Oh, yeah. I like that. That's a good image. And of course, as you're saying these things to me, I'm thinking about my husband. And to be very honest, I've never put words to really to this part of the experience.
yes,
You
and
know.
this is why you have can only like even begin to articulate it unless you had this experience, because I couldn't describe this to a woman who hasn't described it herself, but you could say it to a woman that makes sense to her, because I don't have the
Mhm.
language to do that, because you know from experience what I'm actually saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, we talk it is with some friends of mine who are now single. Um, yeah, they love to see the relationship between me and my husband. They're like, "Oh, I want that." And then, my husband is a touring musician, and so he is on a tour bus, and he's with other men, and in the band, all those men are married, and most of them have children. But in the crew, that's not the case. I'm not sure what's going on there, but the a lot of those guys are like, "Oh, I want a Mary. I can't wait to meet my Mary," because they see how it's just, because they've known him for a really long time, known him for 30 years, and they just see how he's changed. And just
Yes.
having just he's more relaxed, like, he's just more like or that's not the right word, he's more in it. Like, he's more in the world, in his life. I'm not quite sure because they were talking and I overheard and they knew what they meant. I didn't ask for
Yes.
clarification because I was just enjoying hearing how awesome his life is now because I'm here, people that have known him for a long time. It
Y-
was nice to hear. Yeah, it's just like I don't know the word. Not
yeah,
settled because that's not right, but just
they're it's like they're more centered, they're more grounded
centered. Yes. Right, because
because
you're not out searching and hunting. It's like you're like, "Oh, here's my mission." I mean, music has always been his mission in his life, And now he's changing some things now that he's gotten older. And then now that we're married and, or been married for so long, but, it's like he is changing his priorities.
Well, yes, and the
He-
woman will naturally draw things out in the man that is going to help him. He's going to become a lot more well-rounded. He's going to be a lot more centered, and when he has a good woman, he will have the peace to take on the entire world, and he won't care. Right? Like men will do like ridiculous things when their home life is great. That was when you get great men. You'll see the greatest men do the most amazing things when they have a proper home life.
So that's a great case for monogamy.
And only a woman can do that, right?
Mm.
And this is why men have to start selecting someone that's compatible to them that can do that, right? Because then the man can also have to look at being able to do that with a woman, right? And am I compatible and am I able to help her to grow? Because because he's got to be the leader, as he draws out of her these qualities, she's going to then in turn shower them back into him, which is going to give him what he needs. But it only happens by getting her what she needs and drawing out and helping her to grow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yes, and we this is why we need to teach people how to get back to this, because this is how we correct pretty much everything. Because if we don't start at that family level, it won't happen at all, and so forth. And I know for the people there's a couple other things that we'll talk about. But if you guys want to have any questions, let us know. We will have more stuff on the Substack, hopefully very soon, because there's a lot of questions here. And there's a question that I would like to talk about on our Substack that you kind of mentioned about the dealing with the sex worker that would probably be more fitting for that area as opposed to just out here. And then people
Sure.
can follow on the Substack at Dale J. Richardson at Substack.com and so forth. Any thoughts before we close here? Because I want to hear what your ideas to sum up what you got from this.
Wow. Well, as always, we always go off on different avenues of the subjects that we bring up, because what we're talking about is extremely complex. There's so much to them, but they all come back to the same thing, and that is that monogamy works, right? It gives everyone this amazing, stable, loving foundation to grow. The man, the woman, the children, and that goes out into our community. And I just love that. And I feel so blessed that I was able to find that finally, at almost 50 years old, because of all the choices that I had made. I made a lot of choices, a lot of foolishness. I'm glad that I was able to get wisdom out of that, and then share it with other people. It's really important to me that I'm able to do that. And Dale, thank you so much for having me where I can do that for your audience. And then also every time I'm on with you, I learn so much just from having access to you and being able to ask you questions and hear your opinion and your thoughts, because you're different than the other men that are out there on the internet. I don't feel like you have this, you're not trying to get clicks. You're really wanting to learn and share and serve. And I appreciate that. And thank you.
Yes, and I appreciate doing this with you. This is one of the reasons why I was like, okay, I want to have you on, because I'm like, I can get the rationality, and I want to work with women that are at that area where they want to go in and teach people, because I can't do for women what women can do. I can give a
Mhm.
male perspective, but I don't even lack the vocabulary or the experience to properly transmit that information, and vice versa. And this is why there needs to be more of this sensible approach to doing these things, because it's necessary. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. And like this whole fighting, I hate men, I hate women, it's nonsense, right? Like,
It is.
right? So,
Nonsense is the perfect word for that.
yes, and it's like we got to grow up, and I guess we got to teach the younger people, I mean, some tools that they didn't learn because, I mean, that was, I mean, a lot of failing along the way, but now we need to bring solutions instead of just pointing out the problems all the time. And so I will close here with a prayer, and for everybody, we'll see you guys next time. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day. And open our hearts and minds to your will, and help that the men and women would come together and that they would start taking a good look at themselves, and that we can start fixing the problems and healing our families, our churches, our community, our nation. And Lord, that we would be able to heal the younger generation, that they would be able to have some sensibility and have something to look forward to, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Amen.
We'll see you guys next time.